The Cold War wasn't fought on battlefields alone. It seeped into living rooms, train stations, and every whispered phone call. While flashy James Bond gadgets stole the spotlight, another breed of films showed espionage for what it really was: paranoid, gritty, and downright terrifying. But here's the question. Why have so many of these thrillers slipped from memory, even though they captured the essence of the era? Stick around, because the answers are darker than you think. The Kremlin Letter, 1970. Imagine a spy film where the heroes aren't suave, they're disposable. That's The Kremlin Letter, John Huston's brutal take on espionage during the Cold War. From the opening moments, the movie drops you into a shadowy operation bound for Moscow, where a ragtag team of agents is assembled not because they're the best, but because they're expendable. Each character has a flaw, greed, weakness, paranoia that becomes a liability once the mission unfolds. What sets this film apart is its unapologetic cynicism. Forget the idea of noble spies saving the world. Huston makes it clear that espionage is nothing more than a meat grinder, chewing up operatives and spitting them out. There are no slick gadgets, no charming martini orders, just coded messages, secret drop-offs, and the chilling realization that your closest ally might be paid to betray you tomorrow. The plot is a knot of double crosses that grows tighter with every scene. You don't cheer for the spies, you watch them unravel, knowing most of them are doomed. Critics at the time hated its bleakness, calling it too complex and too depressing. But isn't that the point? The Cold War wasn't clean or glamorous. It was murky, unforgiving, and deadly. Revisiting it today feels like staring into the heart of real espionage, where loyalty doesn't exist and every handshake could be your death warrant. The Kremlin Letter isn't just forgotten, it's almost buried, and maybe that's because it dared to show the Cold War for what it truly was, a game where everyone loses. The Defector, 1966. Montgomery Clift's final performance is unlike anything else in spy cinema. In The Defector, he plays an American physicist lured into East Germany under the guise of academic work, only to be coerced into spying. What unfolds isn't a heroic adventure, it's a slow-motion suffocation. Surveillance cameras follow him, interrogations loom, and every step feels like quicksand. Clift, already in fragile health during production, channels a vulnerability that feels painfully real. Unlike polished secret agents, his character isn't equipped for the ruthless game of espionage. He's an ordinary man shoved into extraordinary circumstances, and the fear in his eyes is the fear anyone would have if caught in a state-run spider's web. That raw humanity makes the film both tragic and unforgettable. What's brilliant is how the film captures East Germany's atmosphere. The setting is all gray. Walls, harsh interrogators, and the eerie silence of a state watching your every move. There's no escape, no clever tricks, just the suffocating reminder that once you cross the Iron Curtain, you're trapped in a world where even your thoughts can betray you. Audiences didn't know what to make of it at the time, and the film slipped into obscurity. But looking back, The Defector feels like a chilling prophecy of how espionage really worked. It wasn't glamorous, it was cruel. And Montgomery Clift, in his last role, turned that cruelty into a haunting farewell. This is not just a spy thriller, it's a quiet, devastating eulogy to both a man and an era. Scorpio, 1973. What happens when the hunter becomes the prey? In Scorpio, Alain Delon plays a deadly young operative tasked with eliminating his own mentor, played by Burt Lancaster. That setup alone screams betrayal, but the film goes further. It's not just a story about one spy hunting another. It's a story about loyalty crumbling under the grinding wheels of the Cold War. Set across Washington, Vienna, and Paris, the film paints espionage as a chessboard where pieces are constantly sacrificed. Lancaster's character, an aging operative, knows too much, and the agency wants him gone. Delon's assassin isn't just efficient, he's icy, professional, and detached. The embodiment of the new generation of operatives. The tension builds not only in the cat and mouse chases, but in the uneasy relationship between teacher and student, loyalty and betrayal. Unlike flashy spy thrillers, Scorpio is soaked in paranoia. The settings aren't glamorous, they're sterile offices, dim apartments, and hotel rooms that feel more like traps than shelters. Conversations carry more weight than shootouts. And when violence does erupt, it's swift, brutal, and final. The brilliance of Scorpio is its honesty. It shows that intelligence work is not about saving the world, but about survival in a system where even loyalty has an expiration date. The message is clear. Spies aren't heroes, they're pawns, and pawns are made to be sacrificed. Overshadowed by Bond at the box office, Scorpio slipped into the shadows. But its icy realism still cuts sharper than most Cold War thrillers of its time. The Macintosh Man, 1973. What if the real danger wasn't the enemy, but your own side? The Macintosh Man, directed by John Huston and starring Paul Newman, dives straight into that uneasy territory. Newman plays an undercover operative who deliberately lands himself in prison to infiltrate a network of traitors. But here's the twist. The mission isn't about heroics. It's about discovering just how corrupt his own government has become. The film thrives on misdirection. You think you know who's on the side of justice, but every revelation twists the knife further. Allies turn into enemies, protectors reveal hidden agendas, and the supposed good guys look just as ruthless as the enemy they're chasing. Houston strips away the glamour and replaces it with paranoia. Trust is a luxury, and every handshake could mean betrayal. What makes it unforgettable is Paul Newman himself. Instead of a slick, unflappable agent, he plays a man constantly questioning what he's fighting for. His charm is there, but it's weighed down by disillusionment. The landscapes of Ireland and Malta add an eerie backdrop, windswept fields and isolated coastlines that feel more like prisons than escapes. Critics at the time dismissed it as confusing, but in truth, it was ahead of its time. The Macintosh Man showed espionage not as noble duty, but as an endless cycle of lies, corruption, and manipulation. In a world where the enemy could be your superior, the film asked a question that still resonates today. If you can't trust your own side, who can you trust at all? The Tamarind Seed, 1974. What happens when love becomes espionage? The Tamarind Seed, starring Sophia Loren and Omar Sharif, is part romance, part spy thriller, and all paranoia. On the surface, it tells the story of a British civil servant falling for a Soviet diplomat. Sounds romantic, right? Except in the Cold War, love wasn't just risky, it was political dynamite. The brilliance of the film lies in its dual identity. On one hand, it's a sweeping romance with exotic Caribbean beaches and London backdrops. On the other, it's a tense spy game where every whispered conversation could be bugged and every romantic gesture could double as betrayal. Director Blake Edwards layers the film with unease. Are the characters sincere, or are they using each other? That uncertainty fuels the tension right up to the final frame. Unlike many spy flicks of the era, The Tamarind Seed isn't about action sequences. It's about the slow burn of mistrust. A single coded message can undo a romance. A single kiss can trigger suspicion. And while Loren and Sharif's chemistry sells the love story, the Cold War backdrop never lets you forget the danger simmering beneath the surface. At the time, critics didn't know where to place it. Too romantic for a thriller, too political for a love story. But that's exactly why it deserves a second look. The Tamarind Seed proved that in the Cold War, even love was weaponized. And sometimes, the most dangerous act wasn't pulling a trigger, it was trusting the wrong person. The Salzburg Connection, 1972. A picturesque lake in Austria, snow-capped mountains, and a secret so deadly it could reignite the past. That's the setup for The Salzburg Connection, a thriller where a hidden cache of Nazi files becomes the most dangerous prize of the Cold War. Sounds simple? Not even close. Because the second those files are discovered, everyone wants them. The CIA, the KGB, West Germans, East Germans, and every shady freelancer in between. The beauty of this film is its collision of history. The Nazis may be gone, but their ghosts linger, and the Cold War superpowers are more than happy to weaponize those ghosts for their own gain. The story drags an unsuspecting American lawyer into the crossfire, proving once again that in this era, ordinary men were just collateral in games far bigger than themselves. Visually, the Austrian Alps become the perfect stage. Quiet villages hide deadly secrets, and peaceful lakes mask betrayals lurking beneath the surface. The atmosphere shifts from postcard beauty to claustrophobic dread the moment you realize that every smile could conceal an agenda. Critics shrugged at its tangled plot, dismissing it as another Cold War footnote. But isn't that exactly what makes it fascinating? The Salzburg Connection doesn't just showcase espionage. It shows how unfinished business from World War II bled directly into Cold War paranoia. Forgotten today, it remains a sharp reminder that the line between past and present wasn't just blurred, it was erased. The Double Man, 1967. What if the Cold War could take your grief and weaponize it? That's the haunting premise of The Double Man, with Yul Brynner as a CIA officer investigating his son's mysterious death in the Austrian Alps. On the surface, it looks like a personal story of a father searching for answers. But underneath, it's espionage in its cruelest form, where human tragedy is just another opportunity for manipulation. The film thrives on atmosphere. Snowy mountains become arenas of paranoia. Ski lifts transform into stages for betrayal, and every encounter feels rigged. Brynner, known for his commanding presence, brings a world weariness that fits perfectly. He isn't just a spy chasing shadows. He's a grieving father, unsure if his son's death was an accident or a setup. What makes it unforgettable is how the movie refuses to give easy answers. Friends could be enemies, allies could be traitors, and the truth keeps slipping away. It's espionage boiled down to its cruelest truth. Nothing is sacred, not even family. Overshadowed by bigger productions of its time, The Double Man never earned the recognition it deserved. But its message is timeless. In the Cold War, every weakness, especially love and grief, was fair game. And when governments played dirty, no bond was safe from exploitation. Telefon, 1977, a phone call, a line of Russian poetry. And suddenly, your friendly neighbor transforms into a Soviet sleeper agent with one mission: destroy. That's the terrifying hook of Telefon, starring Charles Bronson in a race against time to stop a rogue KGB officer. Forget futuristic gadgets or glamorous missions. This film leans into one of the Cold War's darkest fears: sabotage from within. The setup is both simple and terrifying. Decades earlier, sleeper agents had been planted across America, ordinary citizens waiting unknowingly for their activation. Now, someone has stolen the codes, and they're being unleashed like human time bombs. Bronson's character must track down the defector responsible before the chain reaction spirals out of control. What makes Telefon so chilling is its plausibility. The idea that your neighbor, your teacher, or even your best friend might be an unwitting weapon of war hit audiences with a gut punch. It wasn't glamorous espionage. It was paranoia turned into cinema. The film mixes action with suspense, but the real tension comes from its central idea: trust no one. A simple phone call could turn the most innocent citizen into an assassin. Overshadowed by flashier action films in the late 70s, Telefon slowly faded into obscurity. But rewatch it today, and it still delivers a nightmare scenario straight out of Cold War anxieties. Sometimes, the scariest spy isn't the one across the border. It's the one living right next door. The Internecine Project, 1974. James Coburn was always cool, but in the Internecine Project, he turns chilling. He plays a professor-turned-government advisor who decides to eliminate every member of his own spy network in a single night. Not because they betrayed him, but because he wants to tie up loose ends before moving up in the world. Yes, this is espionage turned cannibalistic. The brilliance of the film lies in its claustrophobia. Each operative is manipulated into killing another, a domino chain of betrayals that feels both clever and horrifying. No car chases, no explosions, just the quiet efficiency of spies turned against each other, with Coburn orchestrating it all from the shadows. What's shocking is how clinical it all feels. Espionage here isn't about ideology or patriotism. It's about ambition, survival, and ruthless self-preservation. The Cold War may serve as the backdrop, but the real story is about how power eats its own. At the time, critics dismissed it as too small, too bleak. But that's exactly why it deserves attention now. The Internecine Project strips away the illusion of noble sacrifice and shows espionage as it often was: selfish, paranoid, and utterly merciless. If you want to see the Cold War reduced to pure human greed, this is the forgotten gem that delivers it in spades. The Fourth Protocol, 1987. Imagine discovering that a nuclear bomb is being smuggled into Britain piece by piece, through ordinary luggage, everyday packages, and seemingly harmless items. That's the chilling premise of the Fourth Protocol, based on Frederick Forsyth's novel, where Michael Caine and a young Pierce Brosnan face off in a deadly countdown. This isn't over-the-top fantasy. It's grounded in terrifying plausibility. The Soviets' plan is to detonate a nuclear device near an American airbase, sparking chaos without technically violating treaties. It's Cold War strategy at its most devious, using loopholes as weapons. Caine plays the weary professional, the kind of spy who knows too well that the biggest threats often hide in plain sight. Brosnan, on the other hand, embodies the ruthless efficiency of Soviet operatives, cool and calculating with every move. Their clash isn't just East versus West. It's two different generations of espionage colliding. Filmed in gritty British locations, the movie oozes realism. Checkpoints, safe houses, and tense interrogations replace glamour with grit. Every scene ticks like a clock, pushing closer to the inevitable detonation. And when the finale comes, it's not just explosive, it's the embodiment of Cold War dread. Forgotten by many after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Fourth Protocol deserves revival. It proves that Cold War espionage wasn't just about secrets and betrayals. It was about the very real possibility of nuclear fire being unleashed through technicalities and shadows. The Human Factor, 1979. What if betrayal wasn't about politics, but love? The Human Factor, directed by Otto Preminger, strips espionage down to its rawest truth. The film follows a quiet, low-ranking British officer, played by Nicole Williamson, who is discovered to be leaking secrets to the Soviets. But here's the twist. He's not a mastermind, not an ideologue. He's simply protecting the woman he loves. This is espionage without glamour. No fast cars, no dazzling shootouts. Instead, it's office corridors, file rooms, and interrogation chambers where suspicion hangs thicker than cigarette smoke. Every conversation carries the weight of potential betrayal, and every silence screams louder than words. Preminger deliberately avoids action, focusing instead on paranoia, disillusionment, and the emotional cost of a double life. Critics didn't know what to do with it. Some called it too slow, others too bleak. But that's what makes it so powerful. It shows how the Cold War didn't always play out on battlefields or in glamorous casinos. It played out in small rooms, in private choices, and in the devastating cracks inside human lives. By the end, you're left with a chilling realization. In espionage, ideology matters less than vulnerability. Everyone has a pressure point, and love may be the most dangerous one of all. Forgotten today, The Human Factor remains one of the Cold War's most brutally honest spy thrillers, where the enemy isn't the other side, it's your own heart. The Quiller Memorandum, 1966, Berlin at midnight, shadows in every doorway. George Siegel stars in The Quiller Memorandum, one of the most atmospheric spy thrillers of the 1960s. Forget flashy gadgets. This is espionage reduced to whispers, dead drops, and endless doubt. Quiller, an American agent, is tasked with infiltrating a neo-Nazi network still thriving in West Berlin under the cover of Cold War chaos. What makes it unforgettable is its tone. Every scene oozes unease, from dimly lit streets to deserted cafes where silence feels like a weapon. Unlike Bond's bulletproof charm, Quiller stumbles, second guesses, and often feels outmatched. The movie thrives on psychological tension, leaving you wondering if he's the hunter or the hunted. Filmed on location, it captures West Berlin not as a glamorous spy playground, but as a city still scarred by war and already split by ideology. Ruins and modern buildings sit side by side, reminding viewers that history hadn't healed. It had only fractured into new dangers. At the time, audiences found it too slow, too subtle. But that subtlety is what makes it timeless. The Quiller Memorandum doesn't show espionage as fireworks. It shows it as a silent, suffocating duel fought in alleys and whispers. A film less about victory than about survival. It remains one of the era's most underappreciated gems. The Bedford Incident, 1965. Imagine being trapped on a U.S. destroyer during a high-stakes standoff with a Soviet submarine. That's the claustrophobic nightmare of the Bedford Incident. A Cold War thriller that proves paranoia isn't confined to secret agents. It infects entire crews. Richard Widmark plays a captain obsessed with outmaneuvering the enemy, while Sidney Poitier portrays a journalist witnessing the slow unraveling of sanity aboard the ship. The tension comes not from action sequences, but from the relentless psychological strain of brinkmanship. Every order, every hesitation, every sonar ping feels like it could ignite World War III. The brilliance of the film is how it mirrors the Cold War itself, an endless game of chicken where one wrong move could trigger annihilation. The confined setting amplifies the dread. There are no escape routes, no neutral ground, just steel walls, nervous sailors, and the constant hum of a submarine lurking in the depths. Audiences expecting action got something far scarier, a study in how paranoia and pride could doom everyone. The finale still shocks, a reminder that the Cold War was a conflict where accidents could be just as deadly as intentions. Forgotten in the shadow of flashier thrillers, the Bedford Incident deserves revival as one of the most nerve-wracking portrayals of Cold War tension, where survival hinged not on firepower, but on restraint. And restraint, as history shows, was always in short supply. The Odessa File, 1974. The Cold War wasn't just about Soviets and Americans. It was also about ghosts refusing to stay buried. The Odessa File, based on Frederick Forsyth's novel, plunges into that shadow. John Voight plays a German journalist who uncovers a secret organization of ex-SS officers, Odessa, working to shield war criminals and rebuild their influence under the chaos of Cold War politics. This isn't standard espionage. There are no tuxedos or martinis. Instead, it's coded messages, hidden files, and a race through Germany's underbelly to expose a network that thrives on silence and fear. The real brilliance lies in how it ties past and present together. The Nazis may have lost the war, but in the 1970s, their shadows still cast fear, and the Cold War superpowers weren't above using those shadows for their own games. Filmed on German locations, the movie drips authenticity. Dark alleys, tense interrogations, and sudden betrayals give it the feel of a lived-in nightmare. Unlike pure fiction, it's rooted in uncomfortable truths. Organizations like Odessa really existed, and their influence haunted both German states long after 1945. Audiences were rattled by its grim realism, and while it found modest success, it faded from memory over the decades. But revisit it today, and the Odessa File feels eerily timely, a reminder that unfinished history has a way of resurfacing, especially when espionage thrives on secrets better left buried. The Whistleblower, 1986. If paranoia could destroy trust between nations, what happens when it destroys trust inside a family? The Whistleblower, starring Michael Caine, answers that question with devastating clarity. Caine plays a father investigating his son's mysterious death, only to stumble into a web of government surveillance and espionage. Set in Thatcher-era Britain, the film trades flashy spy games for something quieter, but far more unnerving: the realization that your own government may be the enemy. Every discovery deepens the paranoia, and every ally seems less reliable. Caine delivers one of his most understated performances, a portrait of a man realizing that truth comes with a price no parent should ever have to pay. Unlike Bond's world of clear villains, the Whistleblower offers only moral grayness. Intelligence agencies manipulate, cover up, and sacrifice lives to maintain control. The Cold War isn't just played against the Soviets, it's fought within Britain itself, where ordinary citizens become casualties of secrecy. Though overshadowed by other Cold War films, this one stands out for its human focus. It's not about winning the global chess game. It's about what happens when espionage poisons the most sacred bonds of trust. The result is haunting, intimate, and impossible to forget. Cold War spy thrillers didn't need rocket launches or gadget-laden cars to terrify audiences. They thrived on silence, suspicion, and the suffocating weight of betrayal. These 15 forgotten gems prove that espionage was less about explosions and more about paranoia seeping into every corner of life. Which of these do you think deserves a modern revival? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe for more hidden treasures, and remember, during the Cold War, the scariest weapon was trust itself.